I found out my life had been stolen on a Tuesday morning at a bank I had never walked into before. I was there to open a new savings account. Simple errand, 30 minutes, maybe less. I had my documents, my ID, my social security card, the kind of prepared that comes from being someone who keeps things organized, because organization is how you stay in control of your life when control matters to you. The woman at the desk was pleasant. She typed my information, she looked at her screen, she typed again. Then something shifted in her expression. Not alarm exactly, more like the specific, careful neutrality of someone who has been trained to handle a situation without escalating it before they understand it. She excused herself. She came back with a manager. The manager sat down across from me, and he looked at my ID, and he looked at his screen, and he looked at my ID again, and he said, very carefully, "Miss Carter, are you aware that you already have 3 accounts at this institution?" I had never been to this bank in my life. "I don't have any accounts here," I said. He turned the screen toward me. 3 accounts, opened over a period of 4 years, a checking account, a savings account, and a line of credit with a balance that made me grip the edge of the desk to stay steady. My name on all of them, my social security number, my date of birth, my life reconstructed in someone else's hands, used for 6 years without my knowledge, sitting on a bank screen in an institution I had never entered until this exact moment. I looked at the screen for a long time. Then I said, very quietly, "I need to know everything." And the manager, who had been watching my face, said, "I think you should also call the police." My name is Danielle Carter. I am 33 years old. I have a background in human resources and a reputation among everyone who has ever worked with me for being the person who notices things, small things, inconsistencies, patterns that don't add up. I have been told this quality makes me excellent at my job and occasionally exhausting in personal relationships, which I accept as an accurate assessment. I notice things. I just didn't notice this. And the reason I didn't notice is because the person who did it knew me, knew exactly what I paid attention to and exactly what I didn't, knew the shape of my blind spots because she had spent years standing close enough to map them. I'm going to tell you who she is, but first I need to tell you what 6 years of identity theft actually looks like from the inside, from the perspective of the person whose identity is being used, because most people imagine it as something that happens to careless people who lose their wallets or click suspicious emails. They imagine it as a stranger in a dark room, anonymous, opportunistic, impersonal. They don't imagine it as someone who knew your mother's maiden name because she had met your mother, someone who knew your childhood address because you had told her the story of growing up there, someone who knew every security question answer because they had been present for every conversation where those answers had originally been relevant. They don't imagine it as someone you trusted, but that is exactly what it was. Let me tell you about my cousin Tanya. We grew up 3 streets apart. Same age, same schools, same family gatherings every holiday. Close. Through high school and then through the different directions our 20s took us, her toward a series of jobs that never quite solidified into a career, me toward mine, we stayed in each other's lives. She was my emergency contact for years. She knew my social security number because I had given it to her at 24 when she was helping me fill out paperwork for an apartment application and I was stuck in a work meeting, and I had trusted her with it, over the phone. That was the sentence I kept returning to in the weeks after the bank. I had trusted her with it over the phone. She had kept it. I know now, from the investigation, that the first account opened in my name was a store credit card, small limit, opened online with my social security number, my date of birth, my mother's maiden name, my childhood address. 6 years ago, when Tanya was between jobs and behind on rent, and apparently standing at a crossroads I didn't know she was standing at. She chose wrong. She chose wrong, and then she chose wrong again and again over 6 years, opening accounts and building balances and staying just far enough under the reporting thresholds that nothing triggered, nothing surfaced, nothing landed on my radar while she used my name to fund a life her own credit could no longer support. 6 years. Every Christmas, every birthday, every family gathering in between, she sat across from me at my grandmother's dining table and passed the bread and asked about my job and told me about hers, and she knew every single time. I didn't. The 90 days after the bank were the most methodical of my life. I have said I am someone who notices things. What I did not have before those 90 days was the specific fury that sharpens noticing into something surgical, the kind of focus that comes from understanding that someone you loved looked you in the eye for 6 years and chose to continue. That kind of fury is very clarifying. Day 1. I sat in that bank manager's office for 2 hours. He walked me through every account, every transaction, the history of 6 years of activity in my name that I had no knowledge of, the line of credit balance, the store cards, the utility accounts, 3 different addresses where my name appeared on leases I had never signed. I took notes on everything. Day 1, afternoon, I filed a police report. The officer who took it was thorough and kind and told me identity theft cases were often difficult to prosecute unless the evidence was substantial. I told him I intended to make it substantial. He looked at me for a moment. "Do you have any idea who did this?" he said. I had an idea. I didn't say it yet. Not because I wasn't sure, because I needed to be more than sure. I needed to be documented. Day 2. I called a consumer rights attorney who specialized in identity theft cases. She had a calm, methodical manner that I responded to immediately. We talked for an hour. She explained the legal landscape, the civil remedies available to me, the relationship between the criminal investigation and any civil action I might pursue. She told me to gather everything. I had already started gathering. Day 3 through 30, this is the part that people don't talk about when they talk about identity theft, the paperwork, the calls, the process of contacting every institution, every creditor, every agency where my name had been used, disputing every account, filing every fraud affidavit, building the legal record of what had been done and when and how much. It is exhausting work. Tedious, detailed, repetitive, the kind of work that requires you to explain the same situation to a new person every single day for weeks, while that person follows their protocol and you follow yours, and somewhere in the middle of all of it, the truth gets documented in a form that can be used. I did all of it. Every call, every letter, every affidavit. Because I am someone who notices things, and when someone finally gave me something worth noticing, I was not going to let the paperwork be what stopped justice. Day 31. The investigator assigned to my case called. They had pulled the IP addresses from the original account applications, several of them traced to locations that were consistent with Tanya's known addresses over the past 6 years. The earliest application, the store credit card from 6 years ago, had been submitted from an IP address registered to an apartment that Tanya had lived in from that exact time period. They had also pulled phone records. The account verification calls, the ones where someone had called customer service to confirm the new accounts using my personal information, had been made from a number associated with Tanya. Not proof beyond reasonable doubt yet. Evidence, substantial, documented. Building. The investigator asked if I was ready to give a formal statement naming her. I said yes, and then, because I had spent 31 days being methodical, and I had one more thing I needed to do before I let the formal process take over completely, I asked for 48 more hours. He said okay. I used those 48 hours to do something the legal process could not do for me. I called Tanya. I want to tell you about that phone call, because it is the part of this story that lives in me differently than the rest of it. The investigation and the documentation and the legal process, those are external. They happened around me, and I participated in them, and they mattered enormously. But the phone call was internal. It was the conversation I had to have for myself, not for the case, not for the record, not for any outcome except the one where I looked directly at the thing that had been done and said what it was. She answered on the third ring. Normal voice, warm, the voice I had known since we were children on the same street. "Danny," she said. "Hey, how are you?" I had rehearsed this. I had sat in my kitchen the night before with a legal pad and written down what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it, because I am someone who prepares, and this was the most important conversation of my adult life, and I was not going to let emotion make it smaller than it needed to be. "I know," I said. Just that. 2 words. Silence. "I know about the accounts," I said. "I know about the credit cards and the line of credit and the leases and the utility accounts. I know about the IP addresses, and I know about the phone records, and I know that the first one was 6 years ago from the apartment on Meridian Street, because I have the documentation, and the investigator has it too." The silence on her end was the specific silence of someone whose story has just stopped working. "Danny." "I'm not calling for an explanation," I said. "I have the explanation. I'm calling because I needed you to know that I know, and that I remembered. I remembered every Christmas, every birthday, every time you asked me how I was doing while you were doing this." She started crying. Real tears, I think. Genuine in the way that guilt sometimes produces genuine things. "I was going to pay it back," she said. "I always planned to pay it back." 6 years, I said. I know, Danny, I'm so sorry. I was in a bad place, and I told myself it was temporary, and then it just... 6 years, I said again. There was no temporary anymore after year 1, after year 2, after year 3. Every year you chose to continue was a choice. Every family dinner where you looked at me, every birthday card you signed, every time you said, "I love you, cuz," every single one of those was a choice. She was crying harder. I was not crying. I had cried. I had spent 3 days in the first week doing nothing but crying, the specific grief of betrayal by someone you trusted since childhood, and I had let myself do that completely and privately, and I had not saved any of it for this phone call, because this phone call was not for grief, it was for clarity. "The investigator is filing the formal charges tomorrow," I said. "I gave them everything. I have been giving them everything for 31 days. I wanted you to hear that from me." "Please," she said. "Danny, please don't do this. Please. The family." "You did this," I said. "You did it for 6 years. I'm just the one who documented it." I hung up. I sat in my kitchen for a long time. Then I picked up my legal pad and I crossed off the last item on my list. The arrest happened 6 weeks later. I was not there. I did not need to be there. I had done my part. Every affidavit, every statement, every document the investigator and the prosecutor needed to build a case that held up. And the rest of it was the legal process doing what the legal process does when someone has done the work to give it what it needs. My attorney called me when it happened. "They've taken her in," she said. I said, "Thank you." I put my phone down on the kitchen counter. I stood at my window for a little while, looking at nothing in particular, just standing there with the information that it was over, that the 6 years of something I hadn't known was happening were now being formally addressed by a system larger than either of us, that the documentation I had spent 90 days building had done exactly what documentation does when it is complete and accurate and delivered to the right people. It told the truth. It told the whole truth. And the whole truth, as it turned out, was enough. The civil case ran alongside the criminal one, My attorney had filed a civil suit simultaneously, seeking damages for the financial harm, the credit damage, the documented losses, the hours of labor the correction process had required, all of it quantified and presented in the precise language that civil courts respond to. Tanya's attorney attempted several approaches. None of them survived contact with my documentation. The criminal case resulted in a plea. Tanya pled to reduced charges in exchange for full restitution and a formal record that would follow her in the ways these things follow people, in background checks and credit applications, and the particular weight of a thing that is now permanently part of the public account of who you are. The civil case settled. Every dollar of documented damage repaid, every hour of my labor quantified and compensated. My credit, restored through the formal dispute process, was clean. The accounts were closed. The record corrected. The 6 years of someone else living inside my name over. I sat in my attorney's office the day everything finalized, and she asked me how I felt. I thought about it honestly. Tired, I said, and clean. She nodded like that was exactly the right answer. My family took it the way families take things when one member has done something that requires all of them to rearrange the story they tell about themselves. Some of them blamed me, not explicitly, but in the careful way that certain family members have of expressing sympathy that contains underneath it the suggestion that there must have been something you could have done differently, that pressing charges against your own cousin was a choice you made, and that other choices were available. I received these suggestions with the equanimity of someone who had spent 90 days being more methodical than she had ever been about anything. I documented it, and I reported it. I told my aunt, Tanya's mother, when she called. That's what you do when someone commits a crime, even when it's family, especially when it's family, because family is supposed to mean something, and what she did is the opposite of what it's supposed to mean. My aunt didn't have an answer for that. Nobody did. The family is smaller now in the way that families get smaller when the truth gets told, and everyone has to decide what side of it they're on. Some people chose a side I didn't expect. Some people chose the side I did. The ones who chose mine are the ones who understood that protecting someone from consequences is not the same as loving them, and that real love sometimes looks like letting the truth be the truth. I held all three for 90 days. I held all three and I documented everything, and I made every phone call and I filed every affidavit, and I had the phone call I needed to have, and I let the process be the process. Because here is what I know about the truth. The truth does not need your anger to be real. It does not need your tears to be valid. It does not need you to perform your pain in a way that makes other people comfortable with the size of it. The truth just needs to be documented, clearly, completely, correctly, given to the right people at the right time with the right paperwork behind it. That's it. That's the whole thing. I am someone who notices things. I noticed. I documented. I delivered. And 6 years of someone else living in my name came to a complete and total and formally recorded end. My name is mine again. It always was. Now everyone knows it. If this story hit you somewhere specific and real, I need you to tell me in the comments right now. Have you ever found out that someone you trusted completely had been betraying you in ways you couldn't see? How did you find out? What did you do with what you found? Subscribe for more stories where the woman who was wronged in the quiet becomes the woman who documents everything and delivers it to exactly the right place. Smash that like button. Every single comment gets read. See you in the next one.